Introduction of myself. So this is a picture of me, as you can see. I have 7 years of cybersecurity experience. I was a military cyber officer in the Israeli army, and today I do two things. One of them is vulnerability research. I do that for Automotive Technologies. It's a startup based in Israel doing cybersecurity for the automotive industry. And the second thing I do is I'm a security development consultant. I help companies that develop embedded devices with the SDLC, secure, secure development lifecycle. And by that I mean security trainings for embedded developers, security code reviews and penetration testing, and secure architecture. I'm originally from Jerusalem in Israel. Today I live in Tel Aviv in Israel. And then on my free time, I'm a computer science teacher, both in schools and military trainings. And I was a trainer here in DeepSec in the last 2 days, which is by far the most cool and techy thing that I do in my life. A quick introduction of the two companies I work for. The first one is my consulting company, Imperium Security, the logo of whom you can see down there. We do security trainings, white box vulnerability research, and architecture security. And the second company I work for is Automotive Technologies. Automotive Technologies is a startup co-founded with Volkswagen that does end-to-end security testing for the automotive industry. So first, we do end-to-end solution, breaking through the cloud to the factory or to the other cars. We do ECU protection bypasses to disable security mechanisms for car computers. And then we do product development, such as IDS for intrusion detection system and prevention system for automotive-related protocols that is embedded into the car. 2.5 weeks ago, Automotive presented the first IDS to be placed in a car in production. So the first IDS in the world for automotive is now on the road. That is fairly new, and we're very happy about it. And a quick disclaimer that I'll give, since most of the vulnerabilities that we find are disclosed under an NDA and part of our customers' production equipment and computers, I will not talk about any specific vulnerability. Well, I'll talk about one, but it's a public one. But I will not talk about any specific vulnerability that we found inside an ECU, a vehicle computer. But I will try to give the main idea of the new risk that exists for new vehicles and cars, and try to give you a good feeling of what will happen in the next 5 to 10 years. This is our agenda for this talk. I presented myself, and then we'll give an introduction for the automotive industry, past and the future, the coming trends for the new cars. Then we'll talk, most of the presentation will be centered around connected technologies, which are new technologies that are now being embedded into vehicles. And then we'll talk about central management and vehicle clouds. So, the automotive industry today has two main trends. The first one is the connected car. The connected car is the idea of having your car connected to the outside world, talking to the cloud, to the phone, and to the users. And the second main trend is the autonomous car. Here you can see many technologies that are being developed for the autonomous cars, like a sonar or a thermo radar. But those two trends are parallel. They could have happened alone, each one of them, but by chance they're being developed together at the same time in history. This is what creates what we call in the industry the connected autonomous car, and a few technologies that serve autonomous cars serve connected cars, and are being used for both trends of development. Now, if you look at the car we had 14 years ago, in 2005, it wasn't connected to match inputs and outputs. If you had luck, your car those days had an aux connection, so you could play music, and maybe a USB media output for you to play your songs, not pleasantly as today, because you need to press next until you hit the song you want. There was no GUI, there was no complex interaction with the user. But then 10 years later, 2015, you have the cars that we know today. They started to have more external connections. GPS connection, 4G LTE connection for the OEM, for the manufacturer's cloud, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi for your phone to connect to, and then the USB media converted from just playing music to be able to put on files, applications, and more on your vehicle. Now, 2015 is an important year because if you look at the statistics, 50% of the cars manufactured in Europe from this year and above are connected by 4G to the manufacturer's cloud. This means the manufacturer of your car receives telemetrics about your car, and if you have a malfunction in the engine, you would get a phone call telling you to go to the garage. This is a very important change, and it means the car becomes more connected than ever. But if we go 10 years later than that into the future, we see that the cars that are being built today would be connected to many, many new input and output sources. That includes the cloud, 5G solutions, other cars and infrastructures, and all the traditional connections that we know, such as Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and media. And the question is, what does it imply? Because the car companies today, planning for the future, are going through some very rough changes to make that possible. The first change is taking the old CAN bus technology. This is communication technology of cars from the 70s, and replacing it with Ethernet technology. This is required because all of the internal computers of the car are now connected in a way that sends much more data that is much more complex than in the past. The second change is that a lot of mechanical equipment and parts of the car are becoming black boxes with Linux on them. So a lot of the mechanical work that was done in the past on a car is now being transferred into computerized solutions. And the third one is that companies that were originally built of mechanical engineers are now transforming into being software centers filled with software developers. This is a very big change for the manufacturers, since they originally work and act as a mechanical engineering company. And now most of the labor force are software developers that require a very different environment to work in. Those changes also create new demands. The first of them is our vehicle clouds. If you read the news, then Microsoft and Volkswagen just announced doing a cooperation together to make the biggest vehicle cloud in the world. It means that a company that was just building equipment and selling it is now a company that should manage very big clouds with a lot of information. And then what goes out of this is that the IT department of the companies are growing. And there are tons of new InfoSec jobs. This is good for me because then they pay me more, but they start to have a lot of new fears about hackers attacking the vehicles. And the third very big change is now that hackers could attack the vehicles. Connecting the car to the outside world exposes it to many, many new threats that are now starting to being that hackers start to take advantage of. Before we go into technical details, I want to set some terms of the automotive industry, some terminology. Those are terms that I will repeat on a lot, so listen carefully for the next minute, hopefully for the rest of the lecture. First one is the OEM, original equipment manufacturer. An OEM is the company that builds the car. For example, Ford, Volkswagen, and all of the others. There's about 50 big OEMs or known OEMs around the world, and you probably know the names of most of them. Inside the car, we have ECUs, electronic control units. Those units, just a second, okay? Those units are basically computers inside the car. They are connected to each other with various different technologies. The old ones use CAN bus, and the new ones use Ethernet. Oh, I see the problem now. Okay. And the new ones use Ethernet, and they communicate for the car to work. Almost everything in your car is an ECU. So if in the past, when you pressed the brakes, it used some mechanical solution to slow your car, today when you press the brake, it sends an electronic signal over a CAN bus protocol to the brakes computer. And the brakes computer is the one responsible for slowing down the car. The last term is the infotainment. This is just a specific ECU responsible for information and entertainment. And it's this nice screen that you have right next to your wheel. And now we can start with the real fun. So we'll talk about connected technologies, what new inputs and outputs we have for our vehicles. And the new fashion in vehicle IoT are aftermarket solutions, which are also the solution for hackers. Aftermarket solutions are technologies that are being developed by third parties that are not the vehicle manufacturers, OEMs, and are being embedded into the car. Those include, for example, those two options. On the right side, your left side, you can see vehicle dongles. Those are devices you plug into your OBD, your debug port for the car, under your wheel. And they are able to give you telemetrics about what is going inside the car, show you the car location, and check with the internal computers what is their state and if there's a malfunction, and report it back to you. It also shows you fuel consumption and more advanced information. On the second side, your right side, you can see keyless entry solutions like the Viper Smart Start or My Car solution. Those are solutions that replace your old car key with a phone app. So instead of open your car doors with an application, you would do it, instead of opening your car doors with the key, you would do it with an application. Instead of starting the ignition with the key, you would do it in an application. And the way they do it is that they replace the old ignition system with the black box device. And what I want to emphasize is that once this device is connected, and this is a connected device, they connect either to their server or to Bluetooth. Once this device is connected into your car, hacking the device, the server, or your phone is basically equal to hacking the car. Once this device is connected, your car is now exposed to the outside world. And that becomes a really big threat because those devices communicate over both 4G and Bluetooth connections. That's it. Now, we talked about keyless entry, which sounds nice for the private users, but this solution is actually becoming very popular for car sharing solution. Since car sharing and fleet management requires the user to be able to use a car that is not his own, they do not expect the user to grab the keys before they go inside the car. That requires them to replace the ignition technology with key sharing and keyless entry solutions. So those are becoming very popular in hundreds of thousands of cars around the world, maybe millions. I want to show a quick video. This is by Continental. They have a keyless entry solution that explains how the keyless entry works. So let's hope I have a sound here. No? So there is no sound. So I'll talk. Um, um, the virtual key is stored in the driver's smartphone. So once you approach the car, the phone automatically transmits the data to the car. This is usually done by Bluetooth or BLE, which is part of Bluetooth. The vehicle automatically unlocks, and just by pressing the button, you can start driving it. Now, that's very nice and comfortable, but if you look at the past year, being able to hack the application or the server, hackers are being able to steal cars or hack into cars. You can see here news report about a vulnerability found in the My Car application. This was found by JMax, who's a security researcher, and he was able to attack 100,000 cars, open the doors and start the ignition. And on the second side, you can see a news report about the Car2Go application, which is a car-sharing solution that was used in Chicago, where 50 Mercedes-Benz cars were stolen, probably by using a vulnerability. Now, infotainments, dongles, and keys are all Bluetooth connected. And that's a problem because Bluetooth could be vulnerable. Those are CVEs from the last year in different Bluetooth stack. The first one of them is Hell2Cup that I'm going to explain. That was found by Automotive, Knob, and Bleating Beat. All of them allow the user to take control over Bluetooth connected devices. Now, as an example, Hell2Cup is a state machine bug in the Blue SDK L2Cup implementation. Blue SDK is a Bluetooth protocol stack that was developed and used by 100 million devices around the world. It was found by Barak Caspi of Automotive. Barak Caspi is what you call in Hebrew a scary cannon, totach mafrid. It means it's really, really good. And he found this vulnerability last year. I would give a technical explanation of this vulnerability because this vulnerability happens in the L2Cup protocol, which is part, I think you can see it. This vulnerability happens in the L2Cup protocol, which is part of the Bluetooth protocol stack. Here you can see the Bluetooth protocol stack. The layer down there called transport layer are non-important for this. And the L2Cup protocol is what is responsible for creating Bluetooth channels. This is the equivalent to a port. Above it, you see the application layer, for example, SDP. We'll talk about it later. And I want to explain how L2Cup works. Now, when an L2Cup session starts, the client, the computer there on the right side, sends a message, L2Cup connect message, to the device. The device is the Bluetooth server and is the one that you try to pair with to use the Bluetooth for an application. When sending an L2Cup connect message, the user needs to specify the PSM, which is the protocol ID. This ID regards to which application the user wishes to use when connecting to Bluetooth. So PSM1 is specifically SDP, and if this application, if the PSM is a valid PSM, an ID of an application that the device implements, the device will return an L2Cup connect response with a DCID, channel identifier. This identifier will be used later when communicating over the channel, and this is the representation of the port number of the channel. So, for example, one message that the user could send to the device is an L2Cup configuration request specifying the DCID, the configuration parameter it wants to change, and the value it wants to change too. You also need to specify the DCID when sending a message to the upper layer. But since this is why this number is important. Optional configuration parameters could be MTU, the size of the transmission unit, timeout, and more parameters that are meta parameters of the communication channel, the Bluetooth channel itself. The minimal Bluetooth MTU is 48. We know that because if you read the Bluetooth specification version 3, it is, and I quote, all L2 CAP implementations shall support a minimum MTU of 48. This is part of the Bluetooth specifications, and that means that if we try to configure an invalid MTU, something that is smaller than 48, this request should fail. But from reverse engineering the Blue SDK protocol stack, this is what happens. So you can see on line 3, it says in MTU equals to the data iterator plus 2. This is the location in the structure of the MTU. And then the global parameter channel MTU is being set to the MTU that was provided over the request. On line 5, there is a size check to see if the MTU is smaller than the minimum. And if the MTU is smaller than the minimum, the channel is being set to invalid. Now, when a channel is invalid, no communication can be done over it, so you cannot send messages to the upper layer, to the SDP layer specifically, until you change the parameters to make the channel valid again. How will it look? So when the communication starts, it will send a connect message, and then if you send a valid MTU, like hex 200, the MTU would be changed to 200, and the configuration response will send a success message. As you can see, the channel is still valid because the request was valid. But then, if you try to send an invalid size for the MTU, like hex 10, which is 16 decimal, the channel will be set to no, not valid, and the MTU would still be changed to the number that you just sent. But then the device will send an LTU configuration response saying the operation failed and the channel is now invalid. But maybe you saw there's a problem here, and there's a big red flag in this communication. The value is first stored on line 4, and only then verified, checked on line 5. And what we ask when you see this is, can we restore the channel to be valid without changing the MTU for a valid value? So this is the sequence. Because of the lighting, it's very hard to read, so I'll read it myself. Step 1, on your left, is a config request with an MTU of 20, which is of course invalid. Step 2, the channel is invalid, so you can see it in red. And then step 3, the user sends a configuration request to the flash timeout parameter as an example, or any other parameter with a valid value like lit. And because the way this configuration update is implemented, if you try to set the channel to a valid configuration parameter, at the end of this, the channel is being set to valid. So now we have a valid channel with an MTU of 20. This is good for us because we probably could make an exploit out of this. And this is what brings us to the upper layer SDP. SDP is one of the upper layers of Bluetooth, and it implements fragmentation for very big, for sending very big responses. How it does that? It takes the MTU from the L2 CAP layer, then subtracts the SDP header size from the MTU to see what is the available data size for fragment, And this data is being used later for doing a mem copy into the response buffer. The response buffer size is limited, um, and there's also a maximum size check, but we control the MTU, and we subtract 9 from it, which is the size of the SDP header. So if we set the MTU to be 48, which is also invalid, 48 minus 9 will be 39. This value is still small. But then, if we set the MTU to be 8, 8 minus 9 for an unsigned integer would give us the number hex FFFFF, which is 65,000. 65,000, yes, 65,000, which is a very big number, usually bigger than the size of the SDP response buffer. Now, the attack sequence would be set the MTU to a very low MTU using the hell-to-cap vulnerability that we just showed, create an integer underflow that would make the fragmentation size to very big, create a buffer overflow, and from there profit. There's an extended report of this vulnerability and the way to exploit it in memory on the Automotive's website, written by Barak. And this is just a very simple example of a very simple vulnerability that exists in Bluetooth protocol stacks. Now, I'm not saying not to use Bluetooth. All I'm saying that is enabling Bluetooth connection into our car exposes it to new risks. But the problem with Bluetooth is that it's not the only problem. Many new connected interfaces are being produced to the car and implemented in it. Most of them you know, NFC, Wi-Fi, USB, but I'm going to focus on the one you don't know, which is V2X. V2X is one of the new emerging technologies that are going to change our life. It means vehicle to X. It's a family of technologies ranging from vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to person, vehicle to vehicle, and vehicle to home. There are also more, and they add new parts to this protocol every day. But this technology is responsible for making your car communicate with all of the other parties of different types. This is a short example video made by Autotalks. Autotalks is a manufacturer of V2X chips based in Netanya in Israel. And we have no sound, so I will say. But you can see here a car driving on the road, trying to turn left. But luckily, the car coming here sends it a message to avoid collision, and that tells the driver to stop. V2X could also help to improve traffic efficiency by the road signs sending messages to the car, or cars adjusting speed according to messages from other cars. It's a very good video, so I'll stay till the end. And I also left like 5 seconds of commercial for Autotalks because I used the IP. But this technology is going to be very big in a few years. Yes, pioneer and leader providing highly integrated chipsets. But as a small example, the upper layer of V2X technology is ASN1 based. This is a snapshot I took from the CVE list in ASN1 parsers, almost 120 CVEs in the last few years. They didn't publish my V2X parsers for ASN1 CVEs yet, but when they'll publish them, there'll be 8 more. And this is a problem because ASN1 is very complicated, and there are many parsing buffer overflows in it, and this is a new way to expose our car to external risks. But even without buffer overflow to take control over the device, just using a fake V2X model, an attacker could do a lot of bad things. For example, attackers could create false traffic. False traffic is, of course, bad, but they could force emergency brakes, both on autonomous and normal vehicles, and they could also generate false alarms. And those alarms for V2X embedded vehicles would disturb the drivers, maybe make them force them to go to the garage, and that's kind of bad. I'll move on to the next interesting technology that I had the chance to research in the last year, and this is charging technology, vehicle to grid solutions, which are not part of V2X for some reason. But the third biggest trend in automotive today is that the cars are being changed from fuel-based cars into electrical cars. And the terms you need to know for this is EVSE, electric vehicle supply equipment. This is the charging station, similar to the fuel station that we have today. And the PEV, the plug-in electrical vehicle. It's a vehicle, a smart vehicle that is able to be charged by the EVSE. Now, how it works, you connect the EVSE to the PEV, and electricity starts to flow. But there's also another connection, which is the PLC connection, power line communication. So over the electrical connection of the car, the EVSE, the charging station, is communicating over TCP/IP to the vehicle. And you might think, why do you need it? This is very weird. We don't need TCP connection today when we charge our car. But since we want to make our life more comfortable, this connection is responsible for two things. The first one is to set the charging parameters. If you don't want your car to explode, your batteries to explode, the EVSE and the PEV need to make sure that they agree on the voltage and other parameters of the charging. And since this TCP/IP connection already exists, they also use it for billing activity. So instead of going out of your car and paying with a credit card, you could just plug it in and the car will charge you by itself. You would give it your PayPal account or your credit card beforehand, and it would just bill you automatically. This is important because it means the EVSE could charge your car. The car needs to agree. The EVSE cannot just decide on an amount to charge you. And if they agree, everything will work. Now, this is the charging protocol stack. We have, it's based on wired Ethernet over PLC. PLC is just the physical layer of that connection. And it has two protocol stacks. The first one is the HPGP, which is used to initiate the electrical communication and the electrical communication parameters. HPGP is the home plug GreenPhi, which is a PLC standard for automotive, specifically for charging units. And that includes vendor-specific commands and stuff like that. And after the electrical parameters have been set, IPv6 communication is starting over UDP and SDP, then TLS for encryption and signature verification. And over that, we have the V2GTP, which is an XML-based communication for setting the electrical parameters and billing your car. Now, of course, looking at those protocols, we could have XML parser vulnerabilities and header edge cases vulnerabilities that could harm our car. This is, of course, could happen, but what's more important for me to notice, to tell you about, is that all of the other protocols also make the car vulnerable to external communication. Those are CVEs for the VxWorks operation system that were found by Army Labs called Urgent 11. This was a few months ago. This is 4 months ago. And all of those CVEs would allow an external attacker to attack the car over the normal IPv6 and TCP communication of the VxWorks operation system. VxWorks is a real-time operation system widely used by embedded devices, including automotive devices. And this is important because it means that an attacker would not need to research vendor-specific protocols or new V2G technologies. Using just the normal exploits they use on other devices or protocols that they know, they could attack the car. If you see that all of the vulnerabilities are in IP and TCP, it means that the TLS would not protect us from an attack. No signature verification and no encryption to protect us. What a hacker could do, finding a vulnerability such as this, is attack the car over the electricity. It looks something like this. This is an EVSE electricity-based buffer overflow. And it means your car is compromised. So what an attacker could do when attacking a car over the electrical connection, so first, they can charge your credit card and not your car. This is a pun. It's a wordplay because the EVSE and the PV are responsible for deciding how much money you should pay for the electricity. The PV has to agree. If your car is compromised, then the evil EVSE could charge you for as much money as it wants. And that's a very big problem because we like our money. The second thing that could happen is that an attacker could use this connection to hack other ECUs from the charging ECU. Of course, this is bad because more than we like our money, we like our life. And if they get to the brakes computer, we have more money than life. This was my last connected technology, but there are a few more that we could always speak about, but my time is almost out. So the last part of this presentation will focus in centralized management of cars, which is another very big security risk. Because if we look at one EVSE that could be hacked, all of them are cloud connected into the vehicle cloud. They need to be managed somehow by the fuel company or the electrical charging company. And from this cloud, you could probably update their software, get information about who's using the devices and how much they are paying, and get a lot of sensitive data. So the last part of my presentation will focus on the magical place where everything is possible, the vehicle cloud. Possible for a hacker, of course. For the normal user, it's useless on the normal daily basis. So what you could do when hacking the vehicle cloud. We in Automotive, we did a few projects about vehicle clouds. You can always hack them, and you can always find impressive information inside. And I will also show an example from 2 weeks ago. So the first thing you could do is to get all of the normal stuff. This is the stuff that you get when you hack a cloud. This is private information about the users, credit card information, OEM secrets that are secrets of the manufacturer of the car. And this is a good way to harm their stock and get the private data or steal credit cards of the users. But the real stuff you could get, because this is an automotive cloud, which is a different cloud than the normal ones, you can get automotive-related data. You can get GPS coordinates of all of the cars. You can use the remote unlock function to open cars and steal the valuables from inside them. or you can use over-the-air updates to update the ECUs inside the car. Updating the ECUs basically means, again, taking control over the car, stopping your brakes, or billing your credit card. The first option is worst. Now, I would skip this because it doesn't matter for now, but over-the-air updates is a solution that is being used in most of the modern cars today, and they receive software updates with the 4G connection to the OEM. This is basically a good thing, because in the past, if we found a vulnerability or a bug in your car, it means you need to go to the garage and fix it. This would cost a lot of money to the OEMs to call all of the car owners back. It's millions of dollars for every bug they find, and now that they can do it remotely, they could easily fix every bug. Before that, they would avoid fixing vulnerabilities in bugs because it would harm their stock and cost them a lot of money. But if you can hack the cloud, you can update all the vehicles with viruses. It would look something like this. You hack the cloud, it becomes red. Spread updates all over the world. Now the cars are red as well. All of them are compromised, and when you get to your car in the morning, you would see this message on the infotainment system. If you'd like a very recent example, this is from 2 weeks ago. It's an article by Daniel Rekowek from Poland called "How I Hacked Volkswagen and Skoda, a story about Volkswagen Group car remote hacking." It's a very nice article explaining how we hacked the CarNet network developed by Volkswagen for their newest cars. And I encourage you to read it if you like. And to summarize everything, before I want to finish, I want to talk about the bright side. The first one is that OEMs invest immense efforts in cybersecurity. This is why I have a job. And they see it as a very big concern for the futuristic car. They work a lot to fix and imply security solutions. As I said, Automotive has the first IDS in a car, which is a good thing. And hopefully all of the other new cars would have other solutions or our solution. And then the second thing, that connected autonomous cars would be really great. And I really hope that this day would come soon, even if it means I'll be a little afraid when starting my car. To summarize, everything is connected, and there are many new attack vectors on our vehicles, but there would be less accident in the future and life-changing technologies that we could not predict now, but would probably be very important to us in a few years. My name is, again, Lior Yaari. You can contact me if you like on my email. I respond to everything. And then there you have my website of Imperium Security and my LinkedIn account. We have time for questions?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I give the stage to you, and you decide what happens.
So thank you very much for your talk that made public transport so much more attractive at the moment. Are there any questions? We have time. Don't be shy.
Oh.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes. Let me just look at my notes first. So, did you experiment with stuff like SDRs to look at the wireless communication on the different protocols, like OTA, for example?
Yes, we mostly use SDRs to show vulnerabilities that we found, but when researching the new electronic keys, I didn't talk about that, but when opening your car with the new keys, there's a communication layer between the key and the vehicle, and we did few researches about electronic keys to find vulnerabilities in them, using information disclosure vulnerabilities to leak out the key for opening the car, the AES key for communicating with the car. So yes, we scan the network like the RF communication.
I was more looking at either OTA, like if you want to deliver an update, or the vehicle-to-vehicle networks. Because it seems like for a vehicle-to-vehicle network, basically what you need to do is like listen and act on the message of the other, because it could be really important.
Yes.
So you need to be very permissive in accepting. So it's really easy to destroy something there, right?
So for vehicle-to-vehicle communication, you don't need to analyze RF communication using an SDR. You can just use a vehicle-to-vehicle antenna, because all of the messages being sent in V2V technology are public messages or broadcast messages. They need to reach the other cars or infrastructure around, so they're not encrypted. So you use an antenna to get the messages, and we do reverse engineering for V2X devices to see the parsing of the V2X protocols. And then there are security solutions being developed for V2X technologies, but I have another presentation explaining how those solutions that are certificate-based would create new attacks, leveraging those solutions to make the car act as it shouldn't. So they don't have a solution now that is safe, but they know it's a problem.
Thanks.
Okay, we have time for one more question, one last question. Anyone want to pick that up? Yes.
So my question is not as technical, but it's more of, why do we make ourselves more vulnerable in the sense of putting all our details in a smart vehicle or in an electric vehicle? Because it seems that we have many things that we have to care about, and then we just keep making ourselves more vulnerable. So why should I upgrade to a Tesla and not stick with my 2003 Volkswagen Golf, for example?
So more people die from car accident than from cyber attacks. And I don't think this fact will change even when the new cars will hit the road, the connected cars. It would probably change when we'll have autonomous vehicles that are doing less accidents. And we need that to happen for our lives to be better. I said that autonomous connected vehicles would be great, and I really think they do. But we need to understand the new risks that we have when using this technology. We can say the same thing about a phone. When using our phone, we are now exposed to many different ways to spy on us or steal our information. But we still use it because it's awesome. And autonomous cars are better than phones. Okay?
Okay. Thank you very much. Give him a large round of applause, please. And we'll quickly swap speakers to the next one and continue in a moment.